Our reading today is from the book of John, chapter 12, verses 12 through 26. The next day, the great crowd that had come for the festival heard that Jesus was on his way to Jerusalem. They took palm branches and went out to meet him, shouting, "Hosanna! Blessed is he who comes in the name of the Lord. Blessed is the King of Israel." Jesus found a young donkey and sat on it, as it is written, "Do not be afraid, daughter Zion. See, your king is coming, seated on a donkey's colt." At first his disciples did not understand all this. Only after Jesus was glorified did they realize that these things had been written about him and that these things had been done to him. Now the crowd that was with him when he called Lazarus from the tomb and raised him from the dead continued to spread the word. Many people, because they had heard that he had performed this sign, went out to meet him. So the Pharisees said to one another, "See, this is getting us nowhere. Look how the whole world has gone after him." Now there were some Greeks among those who went up to worship at the festival. They came to Philip, who was from Bethsaida in Galilee, with a request. "Sir," they said, "we would like to see Jesus." Philip went to tell Andrew. Andrew and Philip in turn told Jesus. Jesus replied, "The hour has come for the Son of Man to be glorified. Very truly I tell you, unless a kernel of wheat falls to the ground and dies, it remains only a single seed. But if it dies, it produces many seeds. Anyone who loves their life will lose it, while anyone who hates their life in this world will keep it for eternal life. Whoever serves me must follow me, and where I am, my servant also will be. My Father will honor the one who serves me." The word of the Lord.
Good morning. Happy Palm Sunday. You know, this is the first Palm Sunday in a number of years where a child has not whipped me with a palm before the service. So I don't know. I don't know if that's good or bad, but there we go. I don't know what you did this past week, but one of the things I did was I read some old FBI training materials, as one does. And don't blame me, blame the algorithm, okay? It led me into an internet rabbit hole. I just couldn't resist it, frankly. But some of the stuff that I was reading about was essentially about how the FBI agents and CIA agents are so trained specifically in how to analyze body language. That the experts actually say that your body language tells a more honest story than your words do. And so just think about it. Next time when you're trapped in a conversation that you desperately might want to escape from, your words might say, your mouth might say, "How interesting." But your body might be saying, "Please stop, please stop." Or when someone's arms are crossed tightly across their chest while saying, "I agree," their body is saying the opposite. Or I've even learned this, that sometimes when someone says, "Ben, I loved your sermon," while slowly backing away toward the exit, that means they might not actually mean that. Now, we lean in toward people when we're genuinely interested. We mirror the posture of someone that we're connecting with. We fidget when we're uncomfortable. There are slight movements in our eyes. There's the tension in our shoulders, the pace of our nodding. All of those things can be factors in revealing what's actually happening underneath the surface in our hearts. But here's a question. What if our spiritual posture is actually just as revealing as our physical posture? What if how we position ourselves relative to Jesus tells a more honest story than our words ever could? You see, on Palm Sunday, Jesus didn't just see waving palm branches. He didn't just see waving palms. He saw postures. He saw hearts revealed through stances. And so today, as we enter what Christians around the world call Holy Week, is that pivotal week that leads us up to Good Friday and then to Easter. It's a week that Jesus, essentially his entire ministry, was pointing toward. And today, as we look at this passage, we want to talk about three spiritual postures in this passage. And each posture shows us something that's very critical about what it means to follow Jesus. And also, these postures are going to give us some diagnostic questions in how we can assess our own spiritual health. And so it's going to be on the screen, but if you have a Bible with you or a Bible app, or if you've memorized the entire Bible, good for you. But we're in John 12, starting in verse 12, and we want to talk today about 3 postures that really reveal to us the heart of Christianity. And so the first, this diagnostic posture of celebration that we see in the position of standing. And we pick up in our passage in a pretty exciting moment here. It says that the next day, the great crowd that had come for the festival heard that Jesus was on his way to Jerusalem. They took palm branches and went out to meet him, shouting, "Hosanna! Blessed is he who comes in the name of the Lord. Blessed is the King of Israel." And so picture the scene. The narrow streets of Jerusalem would have exploded from some estimates about 50,000 to over 250,000 people. And so I'm picturing Times Square on New Year's Eve. The place is mobbed, it's crazy. Or imagine like people from all over the place coming to, let's say, like the Super Bowl, and they're all in the parking lot, and they're coming out of their cars from all different walks of life and all different places coming to the big event. The city is just like that. It is electric with anticipation. Every Jewish person knows the prophecies. Everybody's asking, could this be the year? Could this be the moment when God delivers us again? Because the word has been spreading like wildfire that there's this rabbi out there who just healed that guy named Lazarus. And that guy who healed him is coming to the city. He's entering the city. And so people, what do? They rush into the streets. They're straining to see. They're standing to get a look. Standing is what we do when something remarkable happens. Standing is the posture of both curiosity and celebration. Now, first of all, if there's something interesting happening, the only way to really see it is to stand. With that many people, you've got to stand. You're reaching, you're finding a nook, you're finding a vantage point through the crowd so you can catch even a little glimpse of what's happening. But standing, it turns out, isn't just practical. Standing is also symbolic. We stand to celebrate things. Standing is a universal sign of respect. It's a recognition of something that's important. And so in the court of law, we stand when the verdict is read. We stand when the bride appears. We stand when the buzzer beater shot goes in. We stand for honored guests, for national anthems. If a performance is good, we clap. But if the performance is great, we stand and clap. Standing says, this person, this moment, this event deserves my full attention and honor. But what is this crowd in our passage? What is this crowd standing for? You see, the palm branches that we have today and the palm branches that they had back then, they're not just random decorations. They are waving branches and laying them down on the floor, on the street in front of Jesus, almost like a royal carpet for his entry. And so these palm branches are actually symbols of the people's nationalist hope. You see, this crowd is standing for Jesus, but they're standing for a Jesus who they believe is going to overthrow Rome. This is a Jesus who's going to solve their problems. This is a Jesus who's going to restore their prominence and validate their view and their understanding of what the Messiah should be. It's basically, Jesus, make our lives better. We're standing for you. Right? Jesus, free us from Rome. Jesus, help our nation become what it's supposed to be. That's why they're waving the palms. It's like this is Independence Day round 2 for them. Their collective memory all goes back to something that none of them experienced, but the stories that they've heard of from 150 years prior when their nation was occupied by yet another foreign army. And there was a military hero named Judas Maccabee who defeated the enemy at that time in this amazing display of force. And after Judas Maccabee had this amazing victory, he came into Jerusalem in the same way that Jesus is now coming in. And he comes down the street, and the people were waving, and 150 years earlier, they were waving those palm branches. And they were quoting the words that they're saying today that actually come straight from Psalm 118. That says, Hosanna, blessed is he who comes in the name of the Lord. Now, Hosanna means save us. Save us now. But they're not just saying save us as worship. This isn't just worship. This is a demand. Right? This isn't just religious talk. This is political talk. This is revolutionary talk. By calling Jesus the King of Israel, that's a bold political statement. It's saying Caesar is not our king. It's saying the Roman occupation is illegitimate. The real king is this guy, Jesus. The crowd is standing tall for Jesus. But this raises, I think, an important mirror of reflection for us, which is, which Jesus are we standing for? The religious historian Stephen Prothero has, in one of his books some years ago, traced how Americans have, in a sense, reinvented Jesus with each subsequent generation to match the spirit of their age. And so he talks about, for example, during the Revolutionary War, Jesus was perceived in many churches and many social circles. Revolutionary era, Jesus was perceived as a champion of liberty and as someone who fought valiantly against tyranny and against oppression. In the Gilded Age, Jesus was often reflected as a sort of a creator of prosperity, a creator of wealth and affluence. During movements of social reforms, Jesus was perceived as an activist for justice. In the Cold War, Jesus became, in a sense, our last line of defense against godless communism. And now Jesus is essentially a self-help guru who wants us to live our best lives. The temptation in every single generation is to stand tall and wave our palms and celebrate a domesticated version of Jesus who affirms our values without challenging our assumptions, who blesses our goals without changing our ambitions, and who loves and forgives us and asks nothing from us in return. And so when we stand in celebration, we've got to ask, which Jesus are we actually standing for? Maybe it's achievement Jesus, who's there to help us break through every ceiling and just crush it at life every day, one day after another. Maybe it's comfortable suburban Jesus, who exists primarily to bless our lifestyle, help our kids get into some good colleges, and eventually help us retire nicely and maybe play a little golf and maybe a little pickleball if we're lucky. Political Jesus, who conveniently endorses our particular party's platform while condemning the other side. The beautiful thing here is that we're always on the right side. We're always on God's side. Maybe it's self-help Jesus, who functions as a cosmic life coach, who helps us achieve our personal goals and become the best version of ourselves, who just, this is empowerment Jesus, who just wants us to, in a sense, have a good life. Or maybe it's friendly neighbor Jesus, who, a bit of like a Mr. Rogers type figure who likes to teach nice moral lessons and from time to time maybe wants an hour or so of our time on a Sunday morning, but he's not going to ask for that much from us. And his goal for my life is generally that I'd be a kind of a nice person, a pretty nice person at least, but he would never say anything difficult. He would never say anything controversial or offensive to me, and he would definitely never say anything to make my Thanksgiving dinner awkward. And the problem is that both the conceptions of Jesus through history and the conceptions of Jesus that we might have today, none of those actually match the Jesus who rode into Jerusalem that day. That Jesus wasn't coming to fulfill people's expectations, but actually to shatter expectations. He was establishing a kingdom, yes, but this was a very different kind of kingdom. And so in our passage, Jesus sits on a donkey and he enters town, and look at what happens next. It says, at first his disciples did not understand all this. Only after Jesus was glorified did they realize that these things had been written about him and that all these things had been done to him. Now the crowd that was with him when he called Lazarus from the tomb and raised him from the dead continued to spread the word. Many people, because they had heard that he had performed this sign, went out to meet him. And so the Pharisees said to one another, "See, this is getting us nowhere. Look how the whole world has gone after him." The religious leaders are pretty much freaking out. They're panicking. They're like, "Look, the whole world." I mean, it wasn't the whole world, but to them, it might as well be the whole world. The whole world is into this guy, Jesus. Everybody's going for Jesus. Our plan isn't working. Here's the irony. Everybody was going for Jesus, but they were following a Jesus who didn't actually exist. They were following a Jesus who was a projection of their own cultural imagination and their own desires. They don't get it. The religious leaders don't get it. The disciples don't get what's happening either. The people closest to Jesus who've been walking with him for 3 years don't understand what's happening until after the resurrection. And so if they misunderstood so badly here, like how much more might we misunderstand? See, the deeper problem with the posture of standing is that it's very, very often conditional and calculated. These standing crowds shout Hosanna on Sunday, and the crowds shout crucify him on Friday because Jesus refuses to be the king that they want to be. They want him to be because he's not there to take down Rome. He's not there to establish a political kingdom. He lets people down in a major way. Now, this week, this really convicted me because it just made me wonder, how often does my standing tall for Jesus come with fine print on it? Like, Jesus, I love you, assuming that you're going to do that thing that I want you to do for me. I felt myself caught in a trap about this recently, that I was praying about a particular situation in my life. It was a dilemma I had, and I realized that as I was praying, that I wasn't actually praying, asking for God's guidance. I was asking for God to endorse the plan that I had already created in my mind. I was like, Lord, please, I give you this, and I pray that you would simply rubber stamp the thing that I already want to do. Like, I get that. Sometimes I pray that way. Sometimes I approach God that way. It is easy to be in that place. But that is really ultimately a picture of what we might call consumer Christianity, where we approach Jesus like we approach a product at a store. It's like, hey, what can you do for me? How can you improve my life? And if you don't deliver what I want, then I'll find another brand. See, the first diagnostic question of Palm Sunday is really simple. It's, what am I expecting Jesus to do for me right now? Would we still be standing there in the crowd if we knew where Jesus' parade was actually going? Now, the people are ready to stand and celebrate Jesus, but again, which Jesus? They were standing for a Jesus who was going to overthrow Rome, but would they still stay standing for a Jesus who would actually die on a Roman cross? And so the Pharisees are worried that too many people are going to follow Jesus, but the deeper problem is not that too many were following Jesus, it's that too few understood what following him actually meant. The crowds stood before Jesus, but were they willing to kneel before him? And so this brings us to a second posture, the posture of surrender, of kneeling. Now, right around here in the passage is where most of our Palm Sunday sermons stop. Jesus is on a donkey, super humble, palm leaves, false expectations about Jesus, amen. But in a sense, that's just the start of the story. Jesus is about to explain what he's really up to here, and there's a little sort of like out-of-place interaction that happens here that sets up another further teaching from Jesus, and so we keep reading. Now there were some Greeks among those who went up to worship at the festival. They came to Philip, who was from Bethsaida in Galilee, with a request. Sir, they said, we'd like to see Jesus. And so it says these Greeks, now they weren't necessarily from the nation of Greece. That was a shorthand way to say that they were Gentiles, that they were foreigners, cultural outsiders. But these were Gentiles who were attracted to Judaism, who've come to celebrate Passover. They're not part of the insider crowd, but they approach Jesus' guy here, Philip, with a simple request. Hey, we really like to meet Jesus. We would love to chat with Jesus. Now, you might think, simple enough question, let me introduce you to Jesus, come with me, maybe some little small talk, like, how was the journey, to Jerusalem? But now Jesus responds to this question in a very strange way. Like Philip is like, hey, Jesus, these guys want to talk to you. And Jesus is like, oh, yeah? And then he says this. Jesus replied, the hour has come for the Son of Man to be glorified. Very truly, I tell you, unless a kernel of wheat falls to the ground and dies, it remains only a single seed. But if it dies, it produces many seeds. I dare you to have this kind of social interaction at your next dinner party. Okay? Hey, someone comes up to you, hey, just wanted to say hi, introduce myself. And you look at them right in the eyes and you just respond, unless a grain of wheat falls to the earth and dies, that person will slowly back away and look for somebody else to talk to. If you want to wrap up a conversation, try that next time. What is going on here? This isn't just Jesus being sort of socially awkward. This isn't Jesus just being odd. Jesus is flipping an entire value system upside down, and he gives us here one of the biggest metaphors there is for his kingdom and how life with Jesus actually works. Everybody, keep in mind, is crowding around Jesus. Everybody is celebrating his rising celebrity status. They want to access his power and his platform, but Jesus here is essentially saying, you have no idea how life with me actually works. And to do this, he uses a simple agricultural metaphor that would have immediately connected with his audience. He talks about a wheat seed. That in that small seed, it really contains the genetic potential to feed thousands of people. But that potential in the seed stays locked away unless the seed is buried. In a sense, the seed dies, that the outer shell has to crack open, that the form of the seed has to actually be surrendered before life emerges. We might say that the seed, in a way, has to kneel down. Kneeling is the posture of sacrifice. Kneeling is the posture of surrender. And so this metaphor challenges the very fundamental operating system of our human ambition. That in our world, what is greatness? In our world, greatness means climbing up. In Jesus' kingdom, though, greatness comes from kneeling down. And so Jesus is illustrating two things here. First, he's illustrating something about himself. He's foreshadowing his own death. He's saying, like a seed, that seed is me. Like a seed, I'm going to die, and I'm going to go down under the earth. I'm going to be buried, but from that death will come multiplication and life. So he's saying, yeah, this is about me, but then he switches it, and is establishing a pattern for anybody who wants to follow him in the future. He's like, so this is for me, but it's also for you guys. And he continues, and he says this, anyone who loves their life will lose it, while anyone who hates their life in this world will keep it for eternal life. Now, pretty jarring language here from Jesus. Now, when he says hate your life, that is a rhetorical device. That is not, hey, I want you to despise your existence. No, life is a gift. He wants us to enjoy and to celebrate life, to cherish life. He's not saying despise your existence. He's saying hold your life loosely. Be willing to surrender your life for something that is greater. That is the life posture of kneeling. Kneeling, that posture, it turns out, though, goes against pretty much every instinct of self-preservation that I have. That we're wired to protect ourselves. We're wired to secure our futures, to hedge against danger. We build careers and we accumulate wealth and status and we manage our image and we seek control as barriers against our own human fragility. It's almost like we're little kids at the beach building these sandcastles and then we build a little sand moat around it, imagining that that's going to hold back the ocean's tide. The anthropologist Ernest Becker, in his book, The Denial of Death, argues that nearly everything that we do as human beings, from building skyscrapers to family legacies and career achievements, are all attempts to achieve, quote, symbolic immortality. That we are trying to grasp something that seems very hard to grasp. But Jesus comes along into that very space, and he says something that frankly sounds like madness to a self-preservation instinct. He says, unless a kernel of wheat falls, unless it kneels down, unless it bows down to the ground and dies, it only is going to remain a single seed. And so the diagnostic question around this second posture for our hearts is, where in my life am I desperately trying to preserve what Jesus is asking me to surrender? Where's the seed in my life that I'm like, this seed is not hitting the ground, it's staying right here, or it's staying right in my pocket? See, for the crowd in Jerusalem, it's their nation's dreams. That's the seed. They're not going to drop that. They want Jesus to fight their battles. They want Jesus to beat their enemies. But what about us? What are we clinging to? In this day and age, could be a lot of things. Maybe it's our reputation. It's like there's this inner voice inside that's like, man, I need people. I don't just want people to like me. I need people to like me. I need you to like me. I need people to admire me. I need people to respect me. I need people to think I'm good, I'm competent, I'm smart, I'm capable. And so we carefully manage how other people perceive us. We want to protect that image at all costs. Or maybe it is something like as basic as financial security, where that becomes the bedrock of my life, and money gives me this sort of like illusion of control that when I have enough money, then I can handle any problem that life throws my way. I'm the master of my own fate. Or maybe we're clinging to comfort, that silent addiction to ease that runs through our affluent culture. We've arranged our lives to maximize pleasure and to minimize pain at all costs. But the posture of kneeling often leads us to places of discomfort. Or maybe for many of us in a hyper-individualistic age, it's actually our independence that we grasp a hold of. We don't want to be accountable to anybody. I don't want somebody telling me what to do. I don't want you telling me what to do. I don't want community telling me what to do. No to community, no to leaders, no to family, no to friends, no to like different authority figures in my life. My motto is, don't tell me what to do. I'm my own person. Or maybe what we're protecting is time. It's just me time. Me time has become a bit of a sacred thing in our culture. It's this assumption that self-focus is my path to fulfillment. Whatever it is, it's probably a lot. It's a lot of things for me. It's probably a lot of things for you. But whatever it is for each of us, the posture of kneeling reveals a whole lot about my spiritual health. For the crowd in Jerusalem, they were willing to stand and cheer for Jesus, but were they willing to kneel and surrender? Think of it this way: if the standing posture reflects our vision of Jesus, then the kneeling posture reveals our trust in Jesus. But Jesus didn't just teach the kernel of wheat principle, he actually lives it. He surrenders his divine privileges. He surrenders. He lets go of his grasp on comfort and reputation and independence and time and even his resources and ultimately his life. He kneels down all the way to the cross. We read about this famously in Philippians 2. And what is the result of Jesus kneeling down, of the seed of his life being broken? It says that therefore God exalted him to the highest place and gave him the name that is above every name. In Christianity, the way up is down. The seed that falls produces many seeds. Here's what's unique about Christianity, though. In every other system, our kneeling is meant to earn something from God, from the divine. I kneel down, I sacrifice, I give something up in order to get something from God, to extract some goodness from God. I surrender to secure God's favor. But in the gospel, it's so different. Our kneeling is a response to Jesus' prior kneeling for us. We don't kneel down to earn God's love. We kneel because we've already been loved. Our surrender isn't the cause of grace, it's actually the effect of grace. This has been called by many the great exchange, where Jesus is taking our sin and our brokenness and error, and he actually gives us in its place his righteousness, his virtue, his life. And so that means that our kneeling is actually transformed. The motive for our kneeling is transformed. It's not about fearful submission. It's about a grateful response from a loved heart. See, the crowd on Palm Sunday, though, wasn't really ready for this message. They wanted a king. They wanted a king who would fulfill their desires, not transform their desires. And so if standing, that first posture, if that reveals what we expect from Jesus, and kneeling reveals what we're willing to surrender to Jesus, then our third and final posture reveals how we're willing to live for Jesus. This is the posture. This is walking the posture of commitment. As a teenager, I loved basketball. The only problem was that basketball didn't love me back. It said, Ben, I like you, but as a friend. But I had the gear, I had the equipment, I had cool clothing, I had great expensive basketball shoes that I saved up for that were definitely gonna make me jump higher just by owning them, frankly. I even had a stylish headband, well, not really like stylish headband that I would wear. Only problem is I wasn't what they call good at basketball. And really, I didn't stick with it. I didn't practice that much. I didn't discipline myself like physically to excel at basketball. I didn't do any of the things that were necessary to get better at that activity. And I think in a similar way, it's just so easy to approach discipleship in the same way. We've got the accessories, I've got my books and my Bibles and my worship albums. But to stay with the analogy a little bit, Christianity is not just about looking the part, it's actually about getting in the game. It's about getting activated. It's about this journey that God has for us. God has so much more for us than we even have for ourselves. And so that's what we see, the third posture in this story of Palm Sunday. It concludes with an invitation to movement, to walking. Jesus says this, whoever serves me must follow me, and where I am, my servant also will be. My Father will honor the one who serves me. And so we move from standing in recognition of who Jesus is to kneeling in surrender to ultimately walking in following Jesus. Christianity is not static. It's not a pose. It's a lot more like a pilgrimage. The first disciples understood this quite literally. They physically walked with Jesus wherever they went. They were constantly traveling from one dusty village to another. To follow Jesus for the first disciples meant to go where he was going. It meant to stay where he was staying, to eat where he was eating. They didn't just admire Jesus from a distance. They got blisters on their feet from walking the same roads that he walked. Walking asks, where are my feet actually going? Here's the diagnostic question. Are we actually moving where Jesus is moving, or are we just admiring his journey from a distance? This is one of the core problems, I believe, with contemporary Christianity, is that it's very disembodied. We've turned Christianity into concepts and worldviews and feelings. We've reduced it to what we believe rather than where we actually go and what we practice and what we do. But notice, Jesus doesn't say, whoever thinks about me. Jesus doesn't say, whoever emotionally connects with me during that one worship song and gets some goosebumps. He doesn't say, whoever has the right theological bullet points about me. He says, whoever serves me must follow me. But this raises a real question for us. What does it mean to walk with Jesus when he's not physically walking among us now? I believe at the most basic level, walking with Jesus means allowing his presence and his priorities to shape my everyday movements and decisions. And there could be, walking is going to look different. The next step of walking with Jesus is going to look different for every one of us, but maybe it's a relational walking. Maybe it's something about reconciliation with that particular relationship that, frankly, we've written off. That person who just bugs us to the nth degree, the family member, the friend who betrayed your trust, the coworker who undermined you. See, the path that Jesus walked actually led him to pray for the very people in the act of crucifying him. Or maybe he's calling you to move toward people on the margins of society. You know, Jesus consistently walked toward those whose his culture pushed away are we. Or maybe he's calling you to walk toward greater personal holiness in your life, not just in what is done in public, but what in private, like honoring the Lord with everything you are. See, the first century crowd was willing to follow Jesus into Jerusalem when he aligned with their hopes, but would they follow him to the cross? Would they walk with him to the cross? Most wouldn't. The way of the cross is not just the way that Jesus came to die, it's also the way he's calling us to live. But hear this, the walking posture is not just about moral effort. It's not just about, let's get out there and let's do this for Jesus. That's probably not going to work. It's not just about merely trying harder to be good people or godly people. It's about companionship with Christ. So I want you to think maybe about a moment in your life when someone walked with you very gently through a very difficult season that you were in. Now, not just that they gave you some like drive-by advice, but they actually journeyed with you through something difficult. That feeling of not being alone in the struggle, that's what Jesus is offering us. Not just a sense of direction or guidance, but also presence. This is part of what it means to walk with Jesus. It's receiving his help over the rough patches. It's having an ongoing conversation with him as you travel together. Palm Sunday, as we talk about these postures, Palm Sunday actually contains the entire gospel in these three physical postures. We stand in celebration not to catch God's attention, but because Christ first stood in our place at Calvary. We kneel in surrender, not to earn his love or earn his grace, but because he first knelt to wash our feet, because he bowed his head on the cross for us. And finally, we walk in commitment, not to earn or to unlock his love, but because his Spirit now empowers us in every single step that we take. This is the rhythm of grace. And that really is my prayer for us as a church family, that in all of our standing and kneeling and walking, that all of it would flow not just from our effort, our initiative, but from this one source, the overwhelming grace of a God who stood and who knelt and who walked for us first. You know, today we started by talking about body language, about posture. The thing that I am so convinced of today is that there is no such thing as a neutral posture. It doesn't exist. Every posture is a worldview. Every posture is a belief. Every posture is a statement. Jesus says, though, he has this invitation. He says that my servant will be where I am. That is the heart of faith, to be where Jesus is. And so that, this morning, this Palm Sunday, that's my prayer for my life. That's my prayer for this church community, that would be our heart's cry. We want to be where you are, Jesus. We want to be about what you are about. We want to be about you. We want to be about your ways. We want to love you more and more. We want to be shaped to look more and more like you over time. Palm Sunday began with people laying down palm branches before Jesus, and today he's inviting us to also lay them down. But today we lay down our expectations. Today we lay down our control. We lay down our autonomy, every resource. And in that surrender, he actually replenishes us and he fills our lives by his Spirit. And so there's a lot to consider today from this passage. There's a lot. It's in a sense, it's a challenging message. It's Jesus offering us life, but it's not life the way that we expect it's going to happen. The people back then didn't expect it to be like this, and we don't expect it either today, 2,000 years later. But we want to move now in our service into a bit of a time of response. It's one thing to think about these thoughts. It's another thing to respond to Jesus. And so we want to bring ourselves before this Jesus right now. And so around on your seats, you should find, I'm not sure if we have if we have one for everybody, but you should find a piece of seed paper. A little seed paper. There should be some around. If you can tear it in half if someone next to you doesn't have it. You don't need a lot of it. And then there's also a card that looks like this, a two-sided card. I invite you to get both of those during this moment of response. And the first thing that we're going to do here on this Palm Sunday and all this talk of seed is we want to simply write our name on this seed paper. This has actual wildflower seeds engrafted into it. And I just want us to write our names. You don't have to write anything else, just your name on this card as a symbolic act of surrender to Jesus. And again, you don't have to do this. Completely voluntary, completely up to you. But to say, Jesus, I do want to stand for you in celebration in the right way. I want to kneel for you, and I also want to walk in your way. And you can write your name on there and then just hang on to that. In addition to that, on this card, there's a section for prayers. And in a moment, we're going to come to the communion table. The band's going to continue to lead us. But I would also invite you to write a prayer on that card. Write your own prayer. Thank Jesus for who he is, who he is to you. Express that as you write. No one is going to be reading these prayers. This is between you and God. And today, if you're like, I'm not sure how to pray because I'm not sure what I even think about Jesus, that's fine. Maybe that's your prayer. If you're wondering about him, just ask a question. State your concern, whatever it is, you can feel free to put it there. And then out of that same place today, as a church family, out of that place of gratitude, this is also the day where our church family, where we bring our pledges to. And so on the other side of that card, there's a section for that. And if you're new to Trinity or you're not sure that this is your church home, there's no pressure. Either way, there's no pressure, but we'd just love for you to bring your prayer forward. If you've already submitted a pledge online, that's great. Thank you so much for that. There's no need to repeat that on the card. You know, when we give, we talk about this all the time, but when we give to the Lord's work, it's part of our worship. It's primarily between you and God. When we give generously, we're not just supporting ministry. We're actually becoming slowly more and more like Jesus over time. We're physically enacting our spiritual transformation. This is confidential. It's not a contract. It's likely, if you came with family today, it's one per family, but everyone can bring their prayer. And so I want to give us a few moments right now. The band will continue to lead us. But whatever's going on in your life today, we believe that the Lord wants to meet with us. We believe that the Lord wants an encounter with us today. Just as he did those 2,000 years ago, that the same Jesus is alive and active and present to us right now in whatever we're facing. And so I want to give us just a few moments to write, to reflect, and then we'll come to the table